Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
If you are not already on mute, can you please mute yourself? There will be a Q&A portion at the end, so that's when you can get your questions in, but just during the presentation, if you could please mute yourself, that would be wonderful. And then it did say in our little poster, but this is more targeted towards Canadian seniors. So it will apply to, I'm assuming, seniors across the board, but specifically the Canadian legal arena. So just to get that out of the way before we begin.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have three lovely lawyers with us today, and I will let them go from here because I will not do you justice
Ah,
I describe.
that's so funny. Are we waiting on, so you'll just continue to let the people in that are coming into the waiting room?
Yeah. Oh, and then everyone. So when you see the view, there's standard, speaker, and gallery. If you click the speaker view, you'll be able to see whoever is speaking and the slideshow at once. So if you want to do that right now, then you can see, both of them
Yeah,
views.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, because we, if you have this webinar on gallery view, you'll see all of the people that are attending. And if you change it, I think it's under view speaker view, then you'll be able to just see the person that's talking and the slides. So hopefully everyone will see. So Michelle and Nithra, can you guys just tell me that you can see the slides and me?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to just jump in and get started. First of all, Kayla, thanks for inviting us to speak to everyone today. This is an exciting group. When I heard the name Cyber Seniors, I was very excited because anybody that loves tech, I for one love technology. So everyone that's able to use technology, especially in the time of COVID, where we're all stuck at home, I think it's a great way to bring people together. Um, I have a slide that will introduce ourselves. I'm joined by my two colleagues, two lawyers that work with me, Nithla Murgadas and Michelle Kang. Just so you don't have to hear me speak for the whole time, we're going to change it up so you can hear from all of us. We're all lawyers that are qualified to practice law in Ontario, and our law firm specializes in wills, estates, powers of attorney, and what we call elder law. So we do have a large number of clients that are seniors. And, we have uh, so we do have a large number of clients that are seniors, and we've got certain expertise, I guess, that you could say is useful in dealing with seniors that have different needs than regular people, I guess, or non-seniors. Although we are all going to be a senior one day. I recognize that, unless someone has some magic potion that I don't know about. So we're going to the I know it's kind of a dreary topic to talk about elder abuse, and but it is a prevalent issue, and it is something that we all need to be aware of. And so, although it's kind of a depressing topic, we are hoping that you will learn something today. You'll walk away with a few points that will help prevent elder abuse, either for yourselves or for people that you love. Michelle's going to talk a little bit about what elder abuse is, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what elder abuse is and what it isn't. She's going to go into the types of elder abuse that we see. And as Kayla said in the beginning, it's really a global phenomenon. This is not something that is happening just in Ontario where we practice, but it is something that does happen across the globe. Um, and often in similar ways and often in different ways. I'm then going to pass it over to my colleague Nithala, who's going to talk about hot button issues that we're seeing in the legal practice. And we're going to talk about prevention techniques, knowing what your rights are. We are going to touch upon capacity and then a little bit about resources. Um, We ourselves, we practice in Mississauga, Ontario. We're a boutique law firm. For those of you who have been to Ontario or are from the province, we are sort of in the Etobicoke border, and all we do is wills, estates, and elder law and trusts. We do nothing else. We don't do real estate. We don't do business. We don't do divorce. We don't do family law. We only practice in this area. We are both solicitors and barristers. So what that means is we do a lot of the paperwork that lawyers do with wills. We do drafting of powers of attorney and wills, but we also represent executors after somebody's died to help them through the process of administering someone's estate. And we also litigate. So when everyone's fighting at the end of the day about the money or the will, that's where we come into play as well. So our clients are, oops, sorry, our clients are essentially all over Canada, although we practice in Ontario. Our clients are all over Canada. We have a few clients in the United States as well. Um, so I'm going to pass it over to Michelle, who's going to talk a little bit about what elder abuse is and the types of elder abuse that we see. And Nithla and I will jump in here and there as well. We are going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. So we are going to have probably 20 or 30 minutes to, your chance to get some free legal information from a lawyer that you don't have to pay for is coming up at the end. So we'll ask you to save your questions and hopefully we'll have some good discussion at the end. So I'll pass it over to you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Kavina. Sorry. All right. So before we dive into issues surrounding elder abuse and prevention techniques, it's very important that we have a high level understanding of what exactly elder abuse is. So any act or lack of action within a relationship where there is an expectation of trust that harms a senior's health or welfare could be considered as elder abuse. So this is very general. And when we talk about elder abuse, it doesn't necessarily have to be perpetrated by people who are really close to us. It doesn't necessarily have to be perpetrated by our family members or close friends. It could be a stranger that you trust. An example of this would be a technician who is dressed up in gear with yellow vest coming knocking at your door saying, "Hey, I'm here to check on your water tanks. There is an appointment for a service checkup." We all know where that leads, right? Especially if nobody ever made an appointment. So if you place your trust in someone and then they exploit that trust, that is essentially elder abuse. All right. Kavina, could you go back one slide?
This slide,
Types of elder abuse.
I don't know. This is what I'm seeing.
One more back.
Oh, something's going on here. Sorry.
No worries.
Give me 1 second. Just messed up the PowerPoint. Hold on.
No worries.
So you want to go to,
Yeah, this is good. All right. So as I was saying, elder abuse can be perpetrated by anybody. That's not necessarily just people in our family, in our home. And it could take place in the home and other residential settings, or even in the community. It can be caused by any person, like I said, in a position of trust and authority, right? So we have some examples here. The given are family, friends, care providers, landlords, staff, and nosy neighbors that like to get into your business. All right. And can we move on to the next slide, please? All right. So here are the different types of elder abuse that we see in our practice. The first one is physical abuse. There's a psychological, emotional abuse. There's also sexual abuse, financial abuse, and neglect. So before we move on to the next slide, I have a quick question for our audience here today. If you could see your chat function in this Zoom app. You could type out your answers. All right. So my question to you all is, um, what do you think is the most prevalent form of elder abuse? Is it physical? Is it psychological? Okay, thank you, Barbara. Okay, you wrote financial. Okay, that's a good answer. Anyone else? Neglect. All right. All right. Oh, psychological. Financial. All right, you guys are so active. I love that. Okay, let's move on to the next slide for some answer to be revealed. Oh,
Did I go the wrong way?
yes. No worries.
Okay. It's very difficult to work this. Okay.
There we go. So here are the statistics from this 2015 survey conducted by the National Initiative for the Care of the Elderly. Nice. It's been revealed that for the year of 2015, the prevalence of psychological abuse was the highest. So congratulations to those of you who typed psychological abuse, but financial abuse is not very far behind. As you can see, there is also physical abuse, followed by sexual abuse and neglect. All right, so please do keep in mind this is a 2015 survey. It might not necessarily reflect what is going on in 2021 to a T, but it's representative of the general trend. And also, there's this phenomena of underreporting of elder abuse cases. Here's my next question for all of you guys. Why do you think there is underreporting when it comes to elder abuse cases? Let us know. You can type it out in the chat function as well. Oh, why do you think it's hard for people to report elder abuse cases?
Fear is one of they're fearful of reporting it.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, they don't know who to tell. People don't think it's really happening to them. Fear, that's a good one. Abuse cannot report. Ooh, you guys have such good answers. There's a lot of fear. Okay.
I think Michelle, I think number one, Michelle, is the fact that a lot of people don't recognize elder abuse as abuse. A lot of people just think it's normal, you know?
Mhm.
They think it's normal when people are talking bad to them or they're being neglected or, they're not being given the type of care that they think that they should be. I think someone's not on mute. Maybe Dion Williams, if you could go on mute, and whoever else
Oh,
is.
thank you very much, Dion.
So
All right. So, yes, like you were saying, Kavina, it's a taboo topic for sure for people to voice. And also, sometimes they might only have one caretaker who is the abuser. What are they going to do if they report the abuse? Are they going to be left on their own? So it's very difficult. Yes, denial is a good answer as well, for sure. So the overall idea is that it's a difficult situation. It's hard to voice, and it's understandable. So it's very important for us to be good neighbors, to care for the people that we know in our community, like the cyber senior community, right? Okay, let's move on to the next slide.
it takes a minute.
Yes.
Slide 8. Oh, this one? Why does it happen? Can you see it?
Yeah. Thank you, Kavina. So here are some factors contributing to elder abuse. So the first one is a burnout or significant stress in primary caregivers. This happens when there's a shortage, of support from the government, from community services. If there is shortage of long-term care beds, there's no proper care facility available for the senior when they need the support for that. It could cause stress on the primary caretakers, right? And the next one is no one is watching because it's hard for the police to prosecute any sort of abuse because sometimes the abused has a memory issues. It's difficult for them to recall the abuse that had occurred to them, or if they just don't want to voice the fact that they have been abused, even if somebody else reported, because the abuser, the perpetrator, is someone that they care for, that they love. It could be their kids, it could be their grandchildren. So, once again, it's very difficult to report and to prosecute. And we have here a feeling of responsibility to provide for loved ones, like I said, makes one more at risk of being taken advantage of. Exactly. Sometimes you're so used to it, it's been the way it is for so many years, you don't realize that it's actually abuse. And you just take it as the norm, right? And finally, we have technology as a contributing factor to elder abuse. The way that technology has been developing, um, and how fast everything is growing, and globalization and globalized information access allows fraudsters overseas to have easier access to seniors' information. And they can cater to the seniors on a more personalized basis to make the scams more believable, right? So speaking of technology and fraudsters doing scam schemes through technology, my colleague Nithala will go into some hot button issues that will discuss this matter further. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Michelle. So I'm going to talk about some of the issues that we as lawyers see prevalent for elder abuse within our community and our cases. One of them is, of course, phone scams. You will recognize a lot of them. The other is power of attorney abuse, undue influence in estate planning, elder abuse in the context of care facilities, and healthcare directives pre COVID 19. So we'll go into a little bit of all of these. So, how many of you have been contacted by the CRA demanding payments? I guess for some it may be legitimate, but in most cases it's not. What about a Nigerian prince or a warrant being issued out for your arrest?
Ah, I've
So
had
these
that.
are, yeah. So these are all very common phone scams that you've all heard of and probably even received. So I'm going to tell you about some of the more sophisticated ones that have come to light because of COVID-19. And because of COVID-19, they've actually become a lot more prevalent. This may be because there's a larger pool of people available for these scammers to victimize. Also, there's a higher tendency towards isolation these days. So that makes a lot more people vulnerable. One is called the bank investigator scam. So this is actually a very old scam that they've put a new twist on. And this comes into play when you get a call about suspicious charges on your credit card, and when the other person, when you become cautious of this person telling you about these charges, the scammer then asks you to hang up and call the phone number on the back of your credit card, which is legitimate. Everyone would do that, right? But in this instance, what happens is when they're calling on a landline, there is apparently the ability for when one side doesn't hang up, for the call not to be disconnected immediately. And these scammers take advantage of it and transfer the line to either their associate or themselves posing to be the bank investigator. And you think it's legitimate, and you, of course, then give them your information. So, a way to maybe deal with this scam would be to use another phone to call your credit card company, or wait maybe half an hour or 15 minutes to then contact your bank or credit card company and verify the charges. Another really sad situation is called the grandparent scam. And so this is when young people take advantage of those who are very vulnerable, and they pose as their possible grandchild and try and seek money from them. And they're obviously targeting those who are a bit more vulnerable and maybe have some memory issues, and they have been successful, unfortunately. So the other,
Sorry, Nith, I'll just jump in there. So the grandparent scam that that's going around, people often will say to me, well, I wouldn't be scammed by that because wouldn't I recognize my own grandson's voice or my own grandchild's voice? Of course I would know that my grandchild's not calling. And you'd be surprised on the phone how many people have either some sort of hearing issues or difficulty hearing. And if they hear a young girl's voice, even if it's not their own granddaughter, could believe if the girl was saying, "Hi, grandma, how are you?" They believe it's their granddaughter. So it does happen. And although people don't think it would happen to them, it does happen.
yeah, and they can get very sophisticated. They could have some access to general information about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really sad one. Uh, right. So in another situation, what else is prevalent is power of attorney abuse. And what is a power of attorney? Some of you will likely know the answer to this, but this is a document that gives another person the authority to make decisions on your behalf with respect to your either financial or property or your personal care or medical decisions. And some of the prevalent abuse of this will take the form of something so innocuous such as your family member taking out everyone for meal, including grandma, and then having it paid on grandma's dime, or buying grandma a couple groceries and actually buying the remaining groceries for themselves personally. In terms of the personal care abuse, it can take the form of neglect or isolating the senior, or possibly even over medicating them or sedating them. And there's also been restrictions on nutrition, or they're not providing adequate nutrition for the person they're caring for. And the last and really scary version is when they fail to provide the necessities of life, and this is actually a criminal offense. So that's complete neglect. And in that situation, you can actually call, if you suspect something like this is happening to someone you may even casually know, you can call a local tip line. So I think Kavita knows a bit about this, where it's you can call your local police station and they can do a wellness check for that person. The other issue that is very common is undue influence in estate planning. And so this is taking someone to possibly get their will done and their power of attorney, and then also sort of getting in as a beneficiary under their will. So it could be as overt as that, or even something very casually trying to become a beneficiary in another way, just being very kind and sort of going through the indirect route as well. The last case that we wanted, oh, sorry, I'm actually on number 4, uh, elder abuse in the context of care facilities. So this is one that you've probably heard a lot about in the media. There's been a lot of talk about long-term care homes and what's been happening with them since COVID-19 and even before COVID-19. But as a result of the pandemic, there's been a lot of unlawful detention cases of senior citizens, and this has led to not only their neglect, but isolation, fear, loneliness. And in these situations, there's been a breach of their standard of care within these homes as well. The last one, not a lot of people know about, but prior to COVID 19, many individuals were obtaining healthcare directives, for example, to not be ventilated. And they didn't foresee COVID 19 as a possibility. And now we know that ventilation is key in terms of medical care. And it could be a short term situation and a short term life saving situation. So their substitute decision makers aren't even able to provide it or consent to this treatment because they have this old directive in place. So that's caused a lot of issues in the legal community. Uh,
I'll
yeah,
just I'll maybe just add to that um in Ontario anyway, and I'm pretty sure it's this way across the provinces, healthcare directives that are documented, such as, you know, these common phrases like pull the plug and don't ventilate me and those types of directives in Ontario anyway that are documented are not actually legally binding on the decision maker. And so healthcare professionals and doctors, they can override what is on those documents in dealing with the substitute decision maker. But what it has caused is it's caused a lot of angst um, amongst the substitute decision makers, because here they are with their person that's incapable, has COVID 19, is in the intensive care unit, and they have this piece of paper that they signed that says, you know, if I have an illness or disease, I don't want to be ventilated. And so you end up with the substitute decision maker, the power of attorney, that has this conflict between, you know, do I put my incapable loved one on a ventilator because the doctors are saying that there's a potential chance that this person could recover, or do I follow their express wishes in this advanced healthcare directive? So I think that the point there is just to be very careful before you start documenting all of the things that you think you may or may not want in terms of treatment when you don't particularly understand and cannot really foresee the circumstances that you might be facing at any particular time, because I'm sure none of us expected, and at least for me anyway, I never expected in my lifetime that there would be a global pandemic like COVID 19.
sure. So now that we've talked about some of the problems that can arise, we want to offer some solutions and preventative tools that you can use to help curb elder abuse. And we can go to the next one. So check on thy neighbor. That's a good sentiment, and that's what you want to do. If you see someone that you know or not even know that you might like a neighbor, for example, or a friend that you haven't heard from in a long time. Maybe call them up and see how they're doing, see who's taking care of them, and just make some inquiries. You just offering that kind of support will be very helpful in a situation like that. Of course, obtain legal advice and legal counsel. So, we're going to offer some potential resources for you at the end of our discussion. There's a lot of good material where you can and where you can go through online, but also what a lot of law firms offer is a free consultation. So you should take advantage of that. Have a 15-minute consult for a matter um, that is of distress to you, and it might help you make a decision. And of course, preventatively, choose your POAs wisely. Discuss with your family and trusted friends who you might be putting on, and maybe we can, or a lot of lawyers may not be doing this, but you can have some checks and balances in place where one person is reporting to another, or there's something in effect where there's going to be a check on the person who is appointed as the POA. increased reporting of abuse or suspected abuse. So this again goes to the wellness checks that are offered by the police. A lot of people don't know about this, but you can contact your local station and say, oh, I think this person is maybe just alone and they need a checkup once in a while. Can you go and see how they're doing? That really could help the situation. So you can do this anonymously online or via phone call. But that's very helpful and just curbing the issue at large. Some other tips that we can offer is to maintain social interactions. So, Cyber Seniors is a great avenue to continue during the pandemic to have social interaction, have discussions, um, uh, have that community that you may otherwise be lacking. And again, in terms of having some checks and balances for your financials in place, we already spoke about the power of attorneys, but you should also speak with your family members and your loved ones and even your bank about who can have authority, who cannot, and the different ways that that they can assist in that. You should know your local resources. So again, we'll go over some that are broadly Canadian available, and then also ones within Ontario that are helpful. But if you contact your local community center, your police station, they can provide even further resources for you to access and help in any kind of preventative measures. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Kavina, who's going to discuss what your rights are in these situations and how you can go about uh, dealing with that. Okay.
Thanks, Nithla. That was great. So I'm gonna. My next slide has this picture of this woman who I just love. I think she just looks like the most fabulous senior I've ever seen in my life. And the key to this is that we. The phrase I like to say is that you are the author of your own life, and we all have the right to make our own decisions for what is best for ourselves. Um, and I know even I myself catch myself telling my own parents what to do all the time. And, you know, kids, we tell our parents what to do. And as our parents age, we take over. Sometimes it's very natural for children to start being decision makers, but that's not really the case. I think as we age, we are still the authors of our own life. We have the ability to make our own decisions. You have the right to choose what's best for yourselves, not your children. You should maintain your own destiny, not your children. And you need to maintain the quality of life that you want. Um, and one of the big decisions that I find our clients often struggle with is they're very afraid that their children are going to move them out of their home and decide for them that it's time to leave the home and live in a long-term care facility. And I think that it's important that seniors, you understand that that decision about you moving out of your home, it is not made by your children. It is not made by your loved ones. It is made by you, by law. That is the law. You decide when you leave your home. The only time that you can be robbed of that decision is if you have lost the mental capacity to make decisions like this for yourselves. Many people, I have a client, she's 107 and she's 100% capable, even though she's on 50 pills a day and she goes to bed at 7 o'clock and she can't walk very far, but she's still mentally capable of making her own decisions about her life. And so I think it's important that people understand um, what capacity is and when do you lose the capacity to make your own decisions and who makes that determination. So one of the misconceptions out there is that people can say, well, she doesn't have capacity anymore. And I think that that's a sentence that should never be said because capacity is not all or none. You don't have capacity or not have capacity. Capacity is time and task specific. So there's different types of capacity. So I have clients that don't have the capacity to drive anymore, but they have the capacity to manage their own banking. I have clients that can't deal with their own bills and financial decisions anymore because they get confused with numbers, but they have the capacity to drive. And so capacity should never be a word that is said on its own. If you're going to use the word capacity, it has to be used with the follow up, which is capacity for what? Right? So, does this person have the capacity to make a will? That's called testamentary capacity. Does this person have the capacity to contract? That's the capacity to enter into a lease agreement or enter into a binding document. Does this person have the capacity to make their own healthcare decisions? Um, Capacity cannot be assessed by your family members, and sometimes it cannot even be assessed by your own general practitioner, your own GP doctor. Some family doctors can assess cognitive function, but they don't necessarily understand all of the legal tests for the different levels of capacity. So, a letter from your family doctor that says you don't have capacity anymore, to me, in the law, it doesn't mean very much. Okay. And so that capacity is like a much bigger issue that I don't have the time to talk about here. But I would say that if your capacity is being assessed, it has to be assessed for a particular purpose. So if you're trying to figure out if you have the capacity to make a new will, that's a different test than the capacity to drive. That's a different test to the capacity to figure out whether or not you can manage your own banking anymore. So I'll leave it at that. Um, I will turn it over maybe to Michelle, if you could just talk briefly about some of the resources, and then we can open it up for discussion and questions.
All right, thank you, Kavina. So here are some elder law support resources that we've gathered here for you. Not just for you, but also anyone you know that may be subject to elder abuse. You can consider contacting your local lawyers that practice elder law. I think it's particularly important that the lawyer is knowledgeable in the field of elder law in order to provide adequate support to you. Okay, you can also call Crime Stoppers. This is a 1-800 number. You can call the local police as well, 911 for emergencies only. And then the other number is for if you have a domestic situation you want to report or you need some general guidance, you can call this number. And we also have this resource from Advocacy Center for the Elderly, ACE. And this slide is just for Toronto-based matters. If we could move on to the next slide, Kavina, we have something that is more general for all across Canada, right? So some additional resources outside of Ontario would be, of course, the Cyber Seniors. It's an awesome platform. You guys can receive a lot of support from there. Also, we have Canada Pensioners Association, CNPA, Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization, CanAge, National Initiative for the Care of Elderly, NICE. These are some of the organizations that you can search up online. Just Google and you will be able to see all of the support that they offer.
I'll just make one correction that this slide actually says these are for Toronto-based matters only, but that's not true. These are more federal. So sorry, that's a mistake on our part. There's also the Canada's Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. It's called CNPA, and that's an organization that you can join online, and it just has great resources as well. So we'll leave it at that in terms of our presentation.